Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. Today we bring you some news: Prince William foils plot against Princess Anne, leaving Camilla speechless. According to an insider source, leaked a well-planned effort to abduct Princess Anne, the Princess Royal was prevented in a spectacular rescue commanded by Prince William, the Prince of Wales. This shocked the British monarchy. The investigation that followed led to Queen Camilla as the suspected mastermind behind the operation. This revelation shook Buckingham Palace and set off events that would change the royal landscape for years to come. There weren't any sirens or rushing footsteps at the start of the narrative. It started with little strange things like a last-minute alteration to a security rota, a quiet chat conducted in front of a photograph, and a letter with a font that seemed random and childlike. Most people would ignore those kinds of things as noise, but for William, who had been schooled in both public service and the actual skills of military search and rescue and intelligence awareness, the cacophony had a point. For a long time, William's public image was that of a dutiful heir stable, always ready to smile and at ease in both formal and casual attire. People didn't talk about the part of his life that was molded by much harsher training as much. His experience flying rescue missions and seeing how quickly things could be done made him pay more attention. He saw patterns communications going down for no reason in one part of the palace, a change in security that had happened without the paper trail that the household usually preserved, and the way a senior assistant had started to seem uneasy in meetings. Those little mistakes added up to a single worrisome impression. At 73, Princess Anne had long been the face of dedicated, almost strict public service. She did hundreds of engagements each year and had a reputation for being on time, efficient, and straightforward. In many respects, she was a princess of a different kind. She was less interested in show and more in work, less interested in media show, and more dedicated to charities, military units, and horse-related causes. People liked its constancy, but at the palace where people were more private, it might often be seen as a bad thing. People's feelings make life in institutions more complicated, and those royal grudges are never straightforward. Multiple senior and former household sources who spoke to investigators said that Camilla and Anne's relationship had been bad for years. Camilla had achieved her goal of becoming a famous royal figure and had been called Queen Consort in recent years. But she still lived in the shadow of two things: the worldwide and never-ending memory of Diana, Princess of Wales, and the quieter but constant example of Anne's dedication to her duties. The sources said that what may have been normal anger was really deeper, more intimate anger. Others thought it was formal, but they claimed Camilla occasionally viewed it as a live reproach. Investigators said the anger turned into something worse. Giles Thornton came into the tale in the middle. His name started to show up in intelligence reports and then in court papers. Thornton was a fixer in the traditional meaning of the word, someone who did well when power, fear, and secrecy all came together. He wasn't a member of the aristocracy or the government. He was a professional whose life had been defined by working with political operators, private security, and people who offered solutions to issues. Thornton was good at lying and manipulating people. According to the security services, he was a guy who could transform rumors into real action. William's intimate bond with Anne provided him insights that official lines sometimes missed. They were close in a useful way. They had afternoon teas, where they spoke about their clients, private discussions about their schedules, and the type of open, honest interactions relatives have when they trust each other. He first heard about the anonymous message that said, "Be careful where you step," during one of those teas. "Your place in the family isn't as safe as you think." It was put together badly with text cut out of newspapers and stuck to cardstock. This is the kind of message that people generally throw away and forget about. It disturbed the Princess Royal. It was another dot on a picture that William was beginning to perceive. He paid more attention to Camilla. He would see how fast she left a room when Anne came in, how her face tensed when planning meetings spoke about the princess's patronages, and how they would make secret phone calls in an empty hallway. By itself, they may not have mattered much. They started to appear like motive when they were together. Investigators say that what happened next was not a distant scheme by unknown people, but a series of decisions made by people that led to crime. The investigation would subsequently say that Camilla hired Thornton. He brought with him connections from London's underbelly men who used to perform rough jobs but now worked as hired muscle. Police and intelligence agencies put up a story that included a plot to kidnap the princess at a high-profile event, so that the controversy that followed would ruin her reputation and compel her to leave public life. Investigators said that their goal was not only to scare Anne, but to force her into a type of ruin. William's breakthrough into the conspiracy thread was both nerve-wracking and lucky. One time, when walking by Camilla's private study, he spotted the door open and Thornton bent over a phone. William faked to drop a large folio on purpose, and Thornton automatically bent down to assist. William saw a line of text on the phone for a second that his training let him read even at a glance, words like asset, extraction, gala, and a command that said in scary capitals, "Eliminate Anne from stage." The way the words were put together showed how cruel the plan was and how it would work. What William had now wasn't a chain of digital proof that could be used in court. It was something that made his hair stand on end. He knew he couldn't just rely on the typical bureaucratic channels. The Royal and Specialist Protection Unit, Ray SP, the domestic police, and the palace staff would all act slowly according to the rules. He started a discreet, thorough counter-investigation to keep the conspiracy from getting away. He used his skills and his abilities to travel throughout the royal and city networks to do this. He used simple personal and disciplined tactics. He followed Thornton about in ordinary clothes, monitored meetings in Mayfair and Soho, and utilized minor surveillance devices including a bug that looked like a power bank and a GPS that was put under a car's chassis. He saw how Thornton's world worked quietly and without caring about the consequences. On a rainy night at a run-down bar called the Black Dog, two of Thornton's friends, one with a damaged hairline and tattoos, the other bald and cold-eyed, confirmed a date. Thornton's guys spoke about March 10th like criminals who had been paid and knew that their commands would be carried out. William understood with a tightening feeling of dread that March 10th was the day of the Commonwealth Day service in Westminster Abbey, one of the most public and monumental occasions on the calendar. That information transformed the game. The idea wasn't a little attack. It was an operation that was supposed to happen in the middle of ceremonial Britain. If this assault worked, it would break down faith in institutions and the families that represented them. William told Rasp about his worries, but at first they seemed like bureaucrats who had dealt with threats before and were being careful. Colonel Alistair Finch, a former SAS soldier who had just joined the family, and Major Eleanor Vance, an intelligence analyst who is very careful, both said to be careful. Finch remarked, "These kinds of messages happen all the time." Major Vance said, "If we cancel everything because of every vague threat, nothing gets done." He pointed out that the letter was poorly written and that there was no clear real threat. Their method was based on the fact that security can't be stopped by every foreseeable danger. Anne, on the other hand, was not a lady who was afraid. She listened to the reasons and agreed with the measured perspective, just like she did with everything else. She wasn't careless, but over the years she had learned that she had to keep going with life and job even when things were hard. But by now the pattern William had spotted made him unusually impatient. He continued gathering proof by listening, observing, and gathering. That night, while Thornton's automobile was parked outside an industrial business, he put a tracker and a listening device beneath it. The gadget told Thornton where to find an abandoned warehouse in the Docklands. By early morning, he had met with a smaller group of guys to work out the details. William listened as they spoke in short, business-like sentences. One of them remarked, "We take her to the gala." "Shh, no trouble. She goes noise builds and she's out. The way they spoke about it like it was normal to think that a person's life could be turned into bad publicity and then thrown away made him more determined. He didn't tell the public what he thought. He didn't even put them all the way through the proper processes. He figured out the danger in real time, understanding that a home was weak because family reputation and state all overlapped like crowns. He followed Thornton about London, took notes, and taped talks. Anne asked Camilla directly whether she knew of any threats during a Windsor family meeting that was supposed to be about private scheduling. She was understandably nervous following a tense talk with William. Later reports and testimony from investigators would show the interaction again. Anne inquired, "Camilla, are you aware of any threats against me?" She was calm but clearly worried. "I think I'm in danger." Witnesses subsequently said that Camilla's answer was calm. She smiled a little and told Anne to relax. King Charles III, who was clearly fatigued from the stress of being king and naturally inclined to believe his wife, remarked in the same carriage chamber that a shorter timetable could be better. William listened and felt the pressure of his role confronting his aunt's husband and wife with a case that was still incomplete may break apart a deep family bond at a dangerous time. Instead, he worked even harder. What happened next was a time of quiet, intensive spying and countermeasures that sound like both spying and the small-scale politics of a family at war. He followed Thornton to a garage, put listening devices near sites where they would meet, and gave testimony to a select group of cops he trusted. He kept an eye on the schedule and saw that the Saatchi Gallery Gala, a charity event for veterans where Anne would be the host, was just as open to attack as any other public event. It was the kind of civilized event where security could be careful and where the natural tendency to not scare attendees would help an attacker. The Veterans Charity Gala might have been described in the most exquisite way: chandeliers casting soft light, staff in neat black uniforms, the sound of contributions, and the steady line of veterans in ceremonial dress who had been requested to come. Anne donned a blue gown that was simple and elegant, not flashy or wealthy. It showed that she was on a mission. She walked through the gathering, saying hello to the people she had come to honor. Camilla was there too, wearing black velvet and a polite grin that never reached her eyes in a manner that others subsequently thought was more than a habit. The long, dark hallway that led to the gallery's private salon, where Camilla told Anne to go to read comments, was long and dark. It wasn't uncommon for important people to go to a calmer place. There were staircases, wings, and service entrances all around the home. The normal cold of logistics turned into panic in seconds. 3 people in black military gear sprang out of the shadows. They were swift and harsh. They put a towel over Anne's lips and crushed down on her hands with heavy trained motions that made it impossible for her to make any noise. The work was clean and quick. The kidnappers acted quickly, putting her in a vehicle and leaving before anybody in the room could fully understand that a major figure was missing. William watched Camilla go toward Anne, and then he saw the princess walk down that corridor. He ran fast. In the light of a single street, the van's tail lights were gone. William didn't think twice. He told Raspy, "Code Red. Someone has taken the Princess Royal. A black Mercedes Sprinter with no plates is leaving Saatchi and going west. I'm going after them. Scramble everything." The pursuit that followed was like something out of a movie, but it was based on the actual dangers of driving a big truck quickly through the streets of a big city. The kidnappers tried to jink or throw off a pursuer by using the city as a cover. William was in an armored Range Rover, which is not a car made for street racing, but for protecting executives. He literally left his life in the hands of his driving instincts, which were based on what he knew as a well-educated driver and what he learnt during tough military exercises. He sent the RISP commander his locations over the radio, maintaining a running log of the coordinates as he traveled. He was thinking less about ceremony and more about schedules, possible escapes, and where a car without plates could go. Anne inside the vehicle held on to her consciousness as the test of composure met the test of brutality. She paid attention to the engine's rhythm, the way her kidnappers spoke, and the noises of the road. One of the kidnappers fell as the vehicle encountered a bumpy road outside of the city. Anne took advantage of the occasion. She had always been practical when it came to jewelry. She probably wore a thick signet ring with a crest on it for decades. She pushed it through a crevice next to the sliding door that couldn't be unlocked, feeling the metal's delicate bite and the pain of the effort. The ring fell over the edge of the track like a little almost funny low-tech breadcrumb amid a high-tech kidnapping. William, who was getting closer, quickly spotted a flash of gold at the edge of some bush and knew it was the piece because it caught the moonlight. He sent the coordinates over the radio and asked for ground troops. He replied, "She left her signet ring here. Someone needs to sweep that embankment. She is attempting to leave a trail." The vehicle came to a halt in front of an abandoned farmhouse. The kidnappers proceeded with the calmness of individuals who thought they were pros. They had a location, a strategy, and a timeline that made it appear like they would succeed. William wouldn't let himself be put on the sidelines. He worked with the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Firearms Command, SCO-19, and a small trusted group of protection officers. He joined the entry team not because he wanted to show off, but because at that point no one else knew as much about the storyline or the network that had been put up as he did. The breach was precise. Entry cops used a battering ram and shock grenades to get the upper hand. Rooms were emptied quickly and efficiently, like specialists who had been taught to do it so well that it became second nature. William discovered Anne tied to a chair in a back chamber where there was a chain of dust and light. She was pale and tired, but she was determined. He let her go. The words they spoke to each other weren't movie-like because they didn't have to be. Of course, there was relief, but there was also a sharp note at the core of everything. "Anne," he began, his voice full of sorrow. "I'm sorry. I should have moved quicker." She glanced at him, and as usual, the princess was both direct and straightening. "You took your time," she remarked, not smiling much and sounding like she was scolding him. Then she let out a short chuckle that sounded more like an exhalation than anything else. There were a lot of arrests that followed. Thornton and a few of his hired men were arrested at the farmhouse, and further arrests were made across the city. MI5 and cyber forensics looked into the trail of communications. Officers were able to read the operational text that had been a jumble of numbers and codes by decrypting encrypted communications on burner phones. Investigators claimed the breadcrumb trail traced back to aides in the palace and linked to bank transactions and meetings in cafes. Thornton started to break down when he saw the proof and thought about spending the rest of his life in a high-security jail. His statements confirmed some of what William and the detectives had suspected, that he had been paid and told to do something with the expected brutality of hired hands, and that the plan came from someone whose problems went beyond petty palace politics. At first, the palace sought to keep the story within the strict limits of privacy that the royal family usually keeps around family affairs. Officials said in public that there had been a serious but contained security incident. There were tweets, short press releases, and a small group of cameras outside the hospital where Anne went to be checked out. But the size of the conspiracy quickly called for more than a public relations line. It called for legal action and a constitutional reaction. What came next was a unique and complicated legal and constitutional procedure. The standard criminal process had to be conducted in a manner that didn't break the rules that the monarchy is based on, as the supposed conspiracy included a member of the royal household, the Queen Consort. An extraordinary tribunal of the Royal High Court was held in secret with top judges and privy councillors present, and it was done with the strict privacy that these kinds of things need. The case included evidence from national security and criminal cases, and it had to deal with the demands of both public interest and the necessity to keep the state stable. The tribunal's decision was terrible for Camilla. Based on the evidence presented, which included Thornton's admissions, decrypted communications, recorded conversations, and material found during police searches, it was decided that she had plotted to kidnap her rival and ruin her reputation in order to take her out of a position of public influence. The decision, which would eventually be made public in a redacted version, found Camilla guilty of conspiracy to kidnap and behavior that was seen as high treason since it was aggressive against the state's symbolic head. The king's answer was heartbreaking. Charles III was recognized for being very devoted to his family and for having a public demeanor developed by years of devotion. He encountered a secret betrayal that put his throne and heart to the test. He showed the proof to Camilla and their close relatives during a fight in the palace. At first, Camilla's argument was a combination of fake astonishment and bravado. When pushed, she said that Thornton had misled and intimidated her, that she had made casual comments but didn't provide permission for illegal conduct, and that the facts had been distorted. The tribunal, on the other hand, found the pattern of communications and the amount of material to be quite convincing. Thornton's evidence in particular linked the payments and orders back to Camilla's group. What happened next was a punishment that was rather harsh by today's British standards. The king issued a royal proclamation that took away Camilla's royal titles, styles, and honors that came with being queen consort. Queen Camilla was no longer an official title, and she was taken out of official records. At first, she was put under a kind of ceremonial house arrest at the palace until things were sorted out. Later, by royal authority, and as a way to protect and punish her, she was sent into exile to a secluded, distant estate in the north of Scotland. There, she would live away from the public eye and under severe rules that kept her from talking to older family members. People who saw the edict go into effect said it wasn't a spectacular collapse, but an architectural unpicking, privileges taken away, access limited, and a neatly planned existence taken apart. The penalty was severe, and for many unusual, not just because of Camilla's status, but also because it showed that a sovereign had chosen the integrity of the institution above personal relationships. The choice divided the nation in ways that made the argument more than just a palace scandal. People who supported the king's decision said that a monarchy that allowed crime at its heart would be hollowed out. Critics said that the process was unjust, and that the king was too quick to judge because of dynastic politics. Long articles were published in newspapers. Members of parliament pushed for statements. On a chilly spring day, tiny groups of demonstrators gathered outside Buckingham Palace and outside the gates of Balmoral, switching between sadness and anger. There were several long-term effects. Anne's already strong reputation became even stronger. People loved her even more because she stayed strong, refused to back down, and insisted on staying at her job. They have always liked her quiet bravery. She kept doing some of her duties and spoke softly about duty and service as her doctors let her. Friends claimed that the event had altered her permanently. She made careful but direct public calls for stronger safeguards for those who serve their country, and for less sensationalist coverage of people who support public life. William came out of the crisis with a new story about him, not just an heir who could represent the continuance of the monarchy, but also an active guardian who would put himself in danger to preserve the institution and the people within it. Many people thought he was a good leader during the crisis because he was tactical, hands-on, and tough. They thought he had a practical mind for running the government in the contemporary world. He was ready to make hard decisions and put his reputation on the line for a risky job. For some, he became the face of a new kind of generational stewardship. King Charles himself acted rapidly to fix the rift, but it was the institution that he healed, not a private reunion. He pledged changes to avoid future abuses, including as stricter security measures, mandatory background checks for workers with more control, a study of how the household communicates, and more openness where royal funds and private duties met public duties. The goal was to get the household away from the old secrecy that made these kinds of plots conceivable and toward improvements in the way the monarchy works that would make it stronger in the media world of the 21st century. Thornton and his friends were put on trial in a public court. Kidnapping and conspiracy to kidnap are serious offenses that may lead to long prison terms. Thornton also faced allegations of coercion and financial crimes. The evidence, which included intercepted communications witness testimony and bank records, showed that a criminal group had been getting into the vulnerable underbelly of privilege. Outside the court there were throngs, and within there were cautious, sometimes painful comments. The convictions that came after were meant to finish the circle of crime and show the public that the law applied even to those who were close to the highest levels of power. Camilla's banishment was both a punishment and a safe place to go. She lived on a Scottish estate that was quiet and chilly, where she had to follow rules, but was also away from the microphones and the constant gossip. People who saw her later said that she seemed smaller and more thoughtful. She had formerly been the center of a life full of social events, but now she regarded it as just rooms and routine. Some people felt sorry for them, while others felt morally correct. She never went to big state events again, and she faded from the public's mind as someone who has been publicly shamed does in an era that swiftly moves from one controversy to the next, news. The controversy created wounds in the family that took a long time to heal. There were private talks and lengthier talks about what happened. Some relationships healed over time, but others stayed broken because of lost trust and the feeling that personal ambition had turned into a public disaster. People started talking about more than just the scandal. They started asking concerns about power, including how responsible unelected institutions should be, how dangerous it is to have hidden influence, and how much it costs people to have dynastic rivalry. But the monarchy lived on. Despite the season's many problems, the institution stayed strong because important people opted to protect it above their own comfort. The King William and others all said that the crown should be more than just a family business and should help keep the country stable. That decision came with a price: a queen who was shamed and disowned, a family that was broken, and a national discourse that would not be easy to end. But it also brought about a type of renewal, a renewed dedication to openness, a stricter professional approach to security, and a public that for a short time thought about what it wants from its symbols. Princess Anne was still the focus of public life, and her reputation became stronger because she was brave and survived. Prince William was more than ever seen by the people as a defender and steward who had stepped in when the norms and procedures may have failed. King Charles, who was hurt and older, made decisions about the structure of the institution he had been granted in order to protect it. The crown, which was almost broken by a personal and family tragedy, clung on, changed, learned its lesson, and refocused on its goal. People still remember the episode not just for its shocking details, but also for what it showed about people in the most prestigious institutions, their pettiness, their ability to be cruel, and their ability to be brave and make sacrifices. The audience was given something calmer than the palace drama they were so interested in, an example of an organization that, despite its flaws, was nonetheless able to choose to be accountable and safeguard the confidence put in it. Once broken, that trust could only be repaired by being transparent, being willing to change, and the hard work of those who still wanted to help. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts, and goodbye for now.